All right, so for this section, I'm going to go over questions 2, 4, and 7 based on the ones that you guys asked to go over. Now, remember, we have rules for when we're adding and subtracting, and we have rules for when we're multiplying or dividing. So just remember, first thing you want to look and see, well, what are we doing here? And if we're not multiplying or dividing, and we're adding or subtracting, remember, we have rules that if the signs are the same, we add, and then we keep the original sign. And if the signs are different, we subtract, and then the larger sign is our sign. So that is our rules when we are adding or subtracting. And then when we're multiplying, remember this is a different rule. It's not going to be in this section, but when we're multiplying, if they're the same, then they're always positive, and if they're different, then they're always negative. And we went through why that happens for that. But so we look here and say, okay, we're adding here and the signs are the same. So that means I'm going to actually add the numbers together, 74 plus 39. All right. And you can add it in any way that you want. You can do this in your head. You can do this in your head, but it's going to give us 113. But since both of our signs were negative, it is minus 113. All right. So now for this problem number 4, there's different ways you can go about doing this. Our PEMDAS tells us that once we get to multiplying and dividing or adding and subtracting, we go left to right. So we could just start from the left-hand side and add or subtract every single number as we move to the next one because it's all adding or subtracting. But the thing with adding and subtracting is you actually can rearrange it in any way that you want. So what I like to do is I like to group all my positive numbers together. So there are my two positive numbers and all my negative numbers together. And then I'm going to rewrite it. So now I'm going to rewrite it in a different order. And I'm going to write my positive numbers first, so 48 plus 17, and then all my negative numbers after it. So minus 39, minus 52, minus 41. And then I'm going to focus on my like sign. So I'm going to do my two positives together because when my signs are the same, I know I just add. So I'm going to focus on my like signs together. 48 plus 17. Right, so then we carry to 1, that gives me 65, and since it's positive, I know it's positive 65. And then here I have 39 plus 52 plus 41. Since they're all negatives, I can add them all together at once. This gives me 11, 12. Carry to 1, this gives me 8, 9, and 13. And since they're all minus, it's minus 132. And now from here, I look and say, okay, well, I have different signs, so now I'm going to subtract. So I'll do 132 minus 65. So then we borrow. That gives me 7. We borrow from here, and then that gives me 6. So since the larger number was negative, it will be a negative 67 as our final answer. All right, we could have just went down the line and added them and subtract them as we went. But then for me, I just think it's easier to group them. Then we only have to add it twice and then subtract it once. Right, so for this problem, it said to evaluate, let me write that out. It says to evaluate the given expression, m minus p minus n, and it tells us what each of our variables are equal to. It says if m is equal to negative 11, n is 31, and p is negative 3.6. So the one thing that you just have to be aware of when you're doing this, and if you remember when we're doing one of the escape rooms, it was almost the identical question, this is make sure that when you are substituting in, that you don't think that this minus takes away this minus, and it's the same thing. That when we see minus p, we just write minus 3.6 because we're subtracting whatever p is. So our first letter m is negative 11, so I will substitute negative 11 in for m. And now it is minus our p, which we know is negative 3.6. And then it's also going to be minus our n, which in this case is just 31, a positive. So now we're going to go through and simplify this. Well, it is negative 11. We know when we minus a negative or we're taking the opposite of the opposite, that we're going to go back, that they cancel each other out. So it's going to be plus 3.6, and then it's just going to be minus 31. So the main thing that a lot of people do is when they see this minus here, they only put in one minus and they don't substitute in properly. So just make sure that when you're substituting in a p, whatever p's value is, it is what it is, and we're plugging in. And then if it's a minus in front of it, then it might turn to a positive like it did here. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to focus on these two numbers first since they're the same sign. So we can do 3.6 minus 11 minus 31. So 11 plus 31 is going to give me 42. Since they were both negative, we know it's going to be 3.6 minus 42. And then from here, when there are different signs, when we subtract with our decimals, we know we have to make sure we line everything up in the correct order, our ones with our ones, and so on. So we need to put the decimal here, and we can add the 0 after 42. And now I can go ahead and borrow the 1 to give me 10 tenths. So this will then give me 4 tenths. And then I will borrow from the 4 to give me 11. 11 ones, and 11 minus 3 is 8. And then we can bring down to 3. And since the larger number was negative, it is negative 38.4. All right, that is it for this section.